Hi everyone. Thank you so much for attending my talk. Today I'm gonna talk about value stream mapping within open source ecosystems. But before starting, I would like to talk about myself a bit because I know some of us know me from my previous role at Bitergia, that is a software development analytics firm focused in open source program offices and inner source. And I'm currently the new OSPO program manager at TODO Group. So during Bitergia, I spent more than 3 years helping organizations in their inner source and open source metrics journey. And right now, what I'm into the group that is the group of organizations that are advocating for OSPO's education and adoption across organizations worldwide. And we do that through networking, training, research, guides, and tooling. I've also, a year ago, I finally finished my Master's of Science in Data Science. And I'm also involved in several communities. Also, when I was at Bitergia in the Chaos project, that is under one of the projects under the Linux Foundation umbrella, as well as the TODO Group, Inner Source Commons, DevRel Collective, and also a local DevRel community, DevRel Spain. You can also follow me through Twitter, and I'm also at LinkedIn and GitHub and GitLab. So first of all, I would like to share with you the agenda of today. These are the main areas where I would like to focus in today's presentations. First, I want to give a bit of context of why doing this talk, why value stream mapping, and why I'm trying to adapt this into an open source ecosystem environment. Also have some introductions about value streams within DevOps environments, that it's the main area where value streams started. I also want to say that I'm not a DevOps expert. I'm not into Agile neither. So if at some point I made something and say something wrong, please correct me. I think this is a talk, of course, but everyone here is to learn from each other. So feel free to correct me and ask questions. And then once finishing this, I would like to share one of the many ways these value streams can be applied for open source ecosystems. So saying that, let's start a bit with why doing this talk. So as you can see, and many of you will know, that's why you are also attending to this conference. Right now, every company is a software company, but I will go far from that. It's not just a software company; it's an open source software company. Between 80 to 90% of modern applications now are containing open source components, which means that many more organizations are starting to see the benefits of open source and are forcing and being forced to deal with open source and start learning about open source and being engaged in open source projects and communities. Highlighting this, any company that wants to go to digital transformation and drive innovation within their companies needs to go open source forward, and as I said, get more involved with the open source ecosystems. And to highlight this fact, I would like to share with you one of the recent OSPO surveys we did at TODO Group. This is the 4th series we have. We have been doing this survey over the past 4 years, and I not want to get into detail in this topic because it's not the main topic of today, but just for you to know that open source program offices are starting to be more common within organizations. They're beginning to think about having more fundings for OSPOs. The professionalization of OSPO communities also is growing, and we are seeing that it has a positive impact. So I've been saying that it is quite common to start thinking about ways on how to better interact with open source projects across industries, across all sectors. So now let's move to a short introduction of value stream mapping in DevOps. Also said that this talk, when I got this talk, I was previously at Viteria. So I made a blog post summarizing a lot of the insights I will share with you today. And you can go to that blog. I haven't uploaded these slides yet, but once we finish with that, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you will see a new post from my side sharing these slides, and you can go there, download them, and go to the different links I'm sharing with you today now. So as I said, if you go to that article, you will also be able to follow better what I'm going to explain with you today. So, okay, one of the main reasons why companies and engineering teams basically start to focus on value stream mapping and tries to define value streams in their development pipeline process is that it has been proved to be a way to eliminate process of waste, and that by taking corrective actions when identifying those processes of waste can increase inefficiency, throughput, and effectiveness in the software development pipelines. So as you can see, for some that are more focused on agile, there is the lead time that is from a task that is created until work is completed. So there is one portion of that part that is wasted time, and there are different types of wasted time that we will see in a while. But the main goal here is in value stream mapping is to manage those value streams with the whole value stream mapping. And we can also identify bottlenecks in this process. So saying that, now it gets clear that what our goal here is to identify these forms of waste, but there are different forms of waste that we can find. So according to Mary Poppendijk, there were 7 forms of waste here. Just to make this talk a bit shorter, we're going to focus on 5 of them. So the first one is partially done work, that is basically incomplete work, like it can be in an open source environment is I might open an issue, but that issue stays in backlog when we are in the Kanban of the project, and it's never done. So that's incomplete work, and of course it takes time, but no one does nothing at the end. Then we have task switching. That is basically task switching. So the time that it takes switch from one task to another. We also have waste of motion. So it's similar to task switching, but in this case, it's not just one individual that switched tasks, but maybe it's a team that was that they had to do one specific task, and when that's done, they move it to another team, and that team might get blocked for some reason. So that's also time that can be measured. And also waste of waiting. So delays, like, okay, we cannot continue because we need approval from any other team, and that's in block. So that's also other forms of waste. And waste of defects, that are basically defects. And I think the better way to measure these forms of waste are in the Kanban views. For instance, in GitHub, I think they're called project boards. In GitLab, they're called Kanban, if I'm not wrong. So the main goal here is be able to measure the time and frequency of the different tasks that moves across the Kanban and across teams. So as I said, is identify non-value added process that can close up the project to product flow. Saying that, these are some of the examples that we can, where we can map the forms of waste. So for instance, when we try to measure partially done work, we can identify that as the time issues are not in backlog or done. In order to map waiting time, we can translate that into time issues are in waiting state. In terms of task switching, maybe we can translate that into number of issues from different projects that are executed by the same person. In terms of motions, it can be types of issues that are done for one team, but are ready to go in another team. And finally, in defects can be tasks reviewed and rejected, and time spent in review. Okay, so now the question is, how can we measure all that, right? So we have defined what is value stream mapping. It gets clear it's something that deals with identifying wasted time. We now have a different set of the type of wasted times that we can find in the pipeline. And now the next question is, how can we build a metrics strategy to go from the initial goal, what we want to get, to metrics that can answer those questions and be aligned with the goal? So for that, one alternative is use the goal question metric approach that is widely used from many communities in open source. For instance, and I've been involved in Chaos for a while now, and I know they use this approach to define the community health metrics standards, and this can also be used in our case. Chaos has two paths. The one is defining metrics for community health analytics, and the other is helping build the software that can be the one that allows us to do that, right? So Chaos have Augur and Grimoire Lab, and I know there is another tool in there, but basically I'm more familiar with Augur and Grimoire Lab, so that can be one tooling that we can use to address these metrics. So here, coming back to our case, let's give an example to explain this. So based on the goal question metric approach, for our value stream mapping, the main goal can be reducing waste and time and effort. So having that goal documented, we can then start defining some questions and some metrics. So these are a table where I defined some of the questions that and metrics that can solve these questions to identify the different forms of waste from our values streams. So for instance, how much effort is needed to deal with issues and pull requests coming from internal teams. Again, here I'm talking about, I'm not focusing on open source environments, so that's why I'm talking about internal teams. But if we translate that into open source environments, it can be, instead of internal teams, there can be like different communities, for instance. And the metric to measure that can be trend evolution of the numbers of issues assigned to a development stage. So in backlog, in review, in done, and so on. Or the trend evolution of the average median time that a label in the Kanban remains assigned to an issue. Another questions that we can have is how long does an issue remain on the Kanban column? And to measure that, we can have a metric that is the trend of evolution of the average or the median time spent in a Kanban column. How long does it take for an issue to go through a set of Kanban columns? So that's similar to the previous one, but maybe we can, depending on the team, we can say, hey, we have a done column and we have a review column, and for us it's important to have them grouped together and see the trend evolution of the average and median time spent in that group of columns. We can also ask ourselves, okay, are there any bottlenecks in the Kanban process? And to measure that, maybe the trend of evolution of the average or median time spent in a Kanban column, or the trend of the evolution of the average or median time spent in a set of Kanban columns can also help to answer these questions. And the last one, how long does an issue have to wait to be processed? That can be measured with trend evolution of the median time spent in the Kanban columns, used as a backlog for tasks that need to be scheduled, for instance. So as I say, this is not, this is just an example, and it depends also on the company, on the organizations, and what the Kanban view of that organizations, of course. Saying that, so we have seen that this can be applied also in internal teams and more in an inner source view. But this can also be translated when working with collaborative environments, with working in open source communities and projects. And when we are doing that, we can also address other questions. So like how many people are asking for features or discussing features in the forums or other communication channels. So let's give an example. If someone is asking for a feature in this course, and then we can measure the time it takes from the person that asked that until someone in GitHub open an issue, that can also gives us the time that it takes from when idea is created to when it's actually documented and into an issue, and then from there also measure the time that from the work that it starts until it's done. So we can have the full process from idea to product, to final product. So saying that, the other question can be how many of those ends in ticket issues or user stories, and how many of them are developed and delivered. Because it can be that someone asks someone requests a feature and no one says nothing. So that's no one spends work on that. It can be that someone's open discuss a feature request in the forum, someone's open an issue, but it gets in the backlog forever. But it also happened that someone's suggests a feature request, opens an issue, and the work is done and is driving to production. So that can be something that we can measure and is really useful within open source ecosystems, because the community, it's a really important factor there. And there are, we can also see how engaged is the community with the project, if they are only just merely users, or they are actually getting involved and they see that as an important project that they would like to see new features coming up. So saying that, I will also finish this with some closing remarks. The first one, this is something that Mary Tengwall, those ones who are into DevOps world might have seen her talk about marketing qualified leads. So her talk says the title of the talk was "Don't Create, Reuse," and I think that is something that can be also applied here. That we don't have to create everything from scratch. There is a lot of documentation coming from DevOps environments that can be translated here, and we can reuse. And I think exactly that can, in this specific topic, can fit very well. But also understand that every organization is different. As I said, the use case that I was explaining later is one way of doing things. It's one way of, okay, I have this objective and then these specific questions that can help. But maybe there are one organization that says, hey, this is nonsense for me, and I'm thinking about different questions that doesn't has to do with what you offer, so it's fine. But saying that, I also think that we can learn from others, and that's the power of communities, right? So there are great communities out there that even though you are new in the films, there are others that were there before, and we can share stories, and we can share experience to try to build your own path. And I also try to remember this as when you are climbing a mountain, so you want to reach the top, and there are others that where they're climbing, so you see the path they took, and you need to climb, but you might see what they are doing, so you can imitate them, and you can try to follow similar path and then reach to the top, right? So I think that learning from others is really important. Engaging with communities can help you in this. And say that I would like to share a short story about TODO Group. That is a community. It's focused more on open source program offices, but I think this topic is important because at the end, we are a group of organizations building resources together to help a new generation of open source program office practitioners with issues these organizations have had in the past that they can learn, and we can have they can go to a guide, they can see OSPO tools, they can engage with these OSPO leaders in OSPO network. So that's basically some of the pillars that the TODO Group focus on in network, education, training, OSPO tools, and research. And saying that, today I was thinking like, okay, it would be awesome. We have great guides of how to start an OSPO and how to build communities and how to engage with open source communities, and it's everything in the website. But it would be awesome if a group of folks here will gather together to create some kind of OSPO tooling playbook or OSPO metrics playbook to focus in the metrics side, because that's something we haven't discovered a lot. Also have some community experts coming from other communities such as Chaos or Inner Source that and other leaders in the OSPO fields that can work together to create this metrics playbook. And for instance, we can add this value stream mapping idea there and have it documented, because right now there is very little information about that, and I would like to see this growing. So having said that, if you want to get more involved in TODO Group, we have a newsletter, we have TODO community meetings every month. We have OSPO discussions. You can also engage in the project in the OSPO GitHub repo, and there is OSPO 101 training models. And we have a Slack there, so if you are involved in OSPOs or you would like to learn more about OSPOs, join there and say hi to the community.